thing that I'm really surprised about is the number of, I don't call them bloggers anymore, the number of social media people who seem surprised at the idea that law enforcement can shoot people if they believe that they have a fear for their life. And I'm thinking, wait, what? So in 1985, so 40 years ago, I mean, you were in 2026, but generally 40 years ago, the Supreme Court had a case, the state of Tennessee versus Garner, which stands for the proposition that law enforcement can use deadly force if they reasonably fear for their life. Now, do I think that law enforcement reasonably fear for their life? Not so much. But in many of the cases where law enforcement shoots and kills unarmed Black people, the first thing they say is fear for their life. And there's another case that came afterwards, Graham versus Connor, which was 80, I'm so sorry, this is not yesterday, 1989, that sort of set a standard for what can determine fear for your life. But these cases, and probably others that I don't know about, sort of open the floodgates for the idea that if a cop says, I reasonably feared for my life, I reasonably feared for my safety, then the shooting was justified. This is the standard. This has been the standard for 40 years. Do I think the standard is fair? No. Are we familiar with police using the specter of Black people um, as like being afraid of them as a way to justify killing? Yes. Do people run around to the US fearing Black people? Yes. And yet, here we are, and people seem surprised that this is a reasonable excuse when it's clear from the videos, well, maybe not clear, let's say that. It is, it appears from the videos that there was really no fear, and this is just like shooting somebody at point blank range when they're fleeing. And there's a lot about fleeing people and the idea of flight being like a justification for police action. I mean, there's like a whole host of laws about this. But you know what all the laws do? They favor law enforcement. They have favored law enforcement for at least 40 years, and we're just like stacked on and on and on with this concept. And yet, and yet people seem surprised.